We are so honored to be hosting María Amparo Escandón, the author of LA Weather. She has won great reads and reviews on her book. It is the current Reese Witherspoon Hello Sunshine Book Club book. She's also the author of Esperanza's Box of Saints and Gonzalez and Daughter Trucking Company. And we are joined for this conversation with Tessa Bartels, book lover extraordinaire. Book Concierge is actually in her email. She's a great friend of Boswell and to Books Everywhere. We counted using her spreadsheet, and she is in 26 different book clubs. So welcome to both of you. Thank you for joining us. We are going to pass the baton over to María Amparo, and she is going to maybe say a couple words about the book and maybe read a short passage for us before we get into the Q&A of our evening. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Daniel. This was a very lovely introduction, and I am amazed at all the events that you guys have in store for book lovers everywhere. And Tessa, I really admire you for all those book clubs. My God, that's fantastic. So I am going to read from my new novel, LA Weather. So let me put my glasses on, right? Okay. Here we go. Okay, so just to give you a little context, this is a scene where Patricia, the youngest of the Alvarado sisters, goes on a hike. Okay. So here she is. After she dropped off her sisters and called her office to request a flex day off work, Patricia drove to Eagle Rock in Topanga. She'd hiked the Mush Trail many times before and knew she'd have decent phone signal in case Oscar tried to reach her. That was the birthday gift she wanted, to spend the perfect 72-degree day by herself, walking among chaparral and sagebrush, admiring the Santa Monica Mountains in the distance, and thinking hard about the state of things among the Alvarados. As her legs negotiated the uneven and sometimes dodgy climb along the dirt paths, her mind kept going back to a single question. How had her family become so disconnected? She remembered the days when everyone knew where everybody else was, what everybody else was doing. Every year, color-coded calendars were posted on the fridge and were updated daily by all involved. A tin can with markers sat on the countertop. Yellow for Oscar, green for Kayla, blue for Claudia, pink for Olivia, red for Patricia, orange for Daniel, and black for family events. Okay, it was all there. Daniel's chess club and swimming competitions, Kayla's mammograms and gallery openings, Patricia's parties and weekend trips, Oscar multiple errands around town, Olivia's school presentations, Claudia's marathons, birthday parties, quinceañeras, bat mitzvahs, weddings, holidays, vacations. Everything was shared. A rhythm, the way the Alvarados moved along the hours and days and weeks of those calendars, year after year, had served as a thread of sorts that tied her family together. But by the time her older sisters had gone to college in New York and Miami and had gotten married and moved to their respective homes, something had broken. The calendar had ceased to exist years ago. The markers, still in the tin can, had dried up and were now relegated to the top shelf with the sous vide cooker, the ice cream maker, and the creme brulee set, still in its original box. Aging undisturbed. It seemed to her that each member of her family was a top, spinning on a surface by itself, unencumbered by what the other tops were doing or where they were going. What surprised her the most was the fact that they still met for Sunday family dinners, rain or shine, with or without husbands, with or without the twins. But people sitting at a table don't make a family. Monologues don't make a conversation. Even the most delicious meal meticulously prepared by Kayla didn't inspire anymore. And in the past year, she'd watched her father descend into apathy. She didn't rule out depression, but she was more inclined to believe something was bothering him. Had she done enough to figure out what it was? She thought not, and this upset her. She wished she could pry open his mind and extract his pain, his worry. Or was this deterioration part of the aging process? She wondered if all families went through this emotional separation as children grew up and the parents got older. Perhaps she had a heightened sensitivity to what was going on because she lived with Oscar and Kayla and could see the day-to-day decline in their care and affection for each other. Why did she live at home anyway? Was she hoping to hang on to the thread of days and weeks that connected her and her parents and sisters in the family calendar? She decided to ask her loyal Twitter tribe, am I suffering a bad case of millennialism? Or am I justified to be comfortably living at my parents' house at 28? Share your thoughts. She posted her tweet, but deleted it almost immediately, suddenly feeling ashamed of herself at the thought that she might be closer to people she'd never met than to her own blood. That's it.
That's a wonderful excerpt. Really tells you a lot about the entire family.
Yes.
One of the things,
go ahead.
One of the things that strikes me almost immediately hearing you read it, Maria, is how all the names of the Alvarados are the same in English and Spanish.
Totally deliberate.
Well, I figured it was. My sister-in-law's, she's one of 7, and her father deliberately, their last name is Sanchez. Her father deliberately named all of them names that were the same in English and Spanish. Veronica, Linda, David, Daniel, etc.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yes. I had a situation in my first book, Esperanza's Box of Saints. There were some characters that had names like Cacomistle, which is like a little weasel in Spanish, but nobody could pronounce it. And I said, next time I'm gonna do a bilingual, search of names that are spelled the same in Spanish and English. And so the whole family's names are like that.
I do feel like I think things have changed since your first book a bit. I mean, for the better, in that we are much more accepting of other cultures' names, and we don't have this sort of, you have to translate everything. So now you can do whatever you want, I think, but
yeah.
Nice observation, Tessa. I love your story about how you came up with the idea for the book, your origin story, and everyone's always interested in that. Would you be able to tell us?
How
I think you were saying when you lived in New York. I started.
Yeah. So okay, so I've lived in LA since I was, I don't know, my early 20s. But my husband got a job in New York in 2014. And so we moved there for 4 years and then came back to LA. In those 4 years, I met a bunch of people, East Coasters, saying, oh, there's no weather in LA. And I go, really? I mean, we don't have blizzards, right? But we have other things like, fires and horrible winds, tree knocking down winds, and drought. And I mean, there's all kinds of weather events that we have to deal with here. And so I sort of said, I am just going to prove this trope wrong. I'm going to write a story. It's not about the weather, but it's a family living through a disastrous year, which was 2016 for them, January to December, where just too much happened. And the backdrop is all the weather events, the fires and evacuations and all of that. But on top of that, this family, I think we've all lived those years where, you're sitting at the New Year Eve table, and you're saying goodbye to the old year, and you go, good riddance. Oh, what a year, and there's some years that are like that, not all of them, thank God, but some years you just want to get them over with, because a relative got cancer, a grandma died, the dog got lost, there was I don't know, there's just
You had a car crash.
yeah, car crash. I mean, things happen, and I don't know. It just kind of comes and goes. They come together in bunches. I think, at least in my experience, there are some years that you just want to end, and I'm sure a lot of us feel that way these days because of the pandemic. Where we're saying enough. We just want this year to end, whether we've had, to have the whole family back at home, or we have a family member who got sick or died, whether, we lost our job or we're furloughed, there's just so many things that have been going on this past year. We're really fed up. We want this to end. And so a lot of people are relating to this story because even though it has nothing to do with the virus, it has to do with nature and with life itself and how it affects us. And sometimes we just need a break.
One of the things as I was reading, every once in a while, I become dyslexic for a word. And as I'm reading, and I made a little note of it, I have my little piece of paper with all my notes. I made a little note of it at one scene, and I don't even know which character it is. Somebody goes to make tea, so they put the kettle on. But I wrote down here, started the kettle, I read battle. So, I'm like, what? They started a battle? And of course, I wasn't surprised that they were starting a battle because there's a lot going on in the family. There are a lot of conflicts going on. So I thought it was interesting that my brain went there. And then I looked at it again. I'm like, no, she's just putting the kettle on. But I thought it was, kind of odd the way my brain jumped to that more negative word in that scene, because there are many scenes in the book where you think everything's going okay. And as you said, like for many of us, we have years like that, or months like that, or days like that, where no matter how inconsequential something might be, suddenly it turns on you and you're in a bad place. You're in a battle when you never expected to be in one.
Yeah. And of course, as a writer, you want to put your characters through hell,
Oh, you did that.
Well, yeah.
Well, the thing is, my husband and I were talking the other day, and we were saying, we should send our love story to the New York Times. Maybe they'll do the Modern Love episode based on us. And my husband says, oh no, our story is so boring. And I said, really? He says, yeah, it started out with, and they lived happily ever after. So what's next? And I said, yeah, right. We don't have conflict. Forget it.
Well, speaking of conflict and tension, there's tension within the story, conflict within the story, as happens in any family or any relationship. You're going to have some sort of little conflict going on. But there's also tensions imposed from without, because as you said, the weather is an important factor in what's going on with this family, especially for the father.
Yes. We all see, climate change 2050, climate change is coming. But really, the current weather whether it's climate change related or not, the current weather, it does affect us, and, call it a hurricane or a flood or a twister or it's just, we're really at the mercy of weather. And this family is at the mercy of the weather in LA.
But you very early on in the book, you have a scene where they're in the garage and he's, I think it's Kayla who is noticing, here's the emergency kit for fires. Here's the emergency kit for earthquakes. Here's the, so it's not like they're like, oh, there's nothing we can do about it. I mean, they're prepared.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And I mean, I don't know if everybody in LA is prepared, but
I'm sure they're not.
No, but some people, are cautious and have their emergency kit or have a suitcase prepared in case they get evacuated. We've gotten evacuated twice for fire. And so we're ready to go. Vámonos.
I love if I can just say something of the emergency kit, I really love the opening of your book. I love that there's a little misdirection. In fact, when I sell it to people, I have to say something bad that's going to happen. There's lots of bad things in the book, but don't panic about the first thing, because otherwise there's certain like young moms and stuff, they're going to I can't read it. But I love the way that you use that scene to kind of lay out the lay of the land. Walking through the house is like walking through the family. Mm-hmm. And home is so important in the story and family is so important in the story. And I love the way you brought them together. So congratulations. How did you work that out? Like, were you thinking about that? Is that the way, did it just grow from that, or did you have to change things around?
Well, I was thinking of how could I just sort of snake through the house, to tell their story, that there's 3 sisters, they're grown, they're gone, but these are the parents, and, they're aging and they're taking care of these twins, which they were really taking care of. but it was my device, if you will, to present the house, right?
Loved it.
Yeah.
Tessa?
Yeah, I was going to say it was very effective. It put me right into the story, right into their framework, and helped me very clearly picture their relationships right at the outset. And then as I got to know them better, of course, I learned a little bit more about their relationships and what was going on. I thought that was a very effective way of starting it. And talk about starting out with a bang. I mean, yes, my heart was in my throat also. I used to work at a children's hospital and I saw some of those cases, and it was, a little frightening to start with.
Of course, yeah.
But another thing that I really, really liked is the family dinners that weren't always, because not everybody came all the time. And yet they maintained that we always have family dinner.
It was a tradition in the family. Mm-hmm. And that I literally took it from my own family. As I was growing up, we always ate together every night as I was growing on. And then after we all got married, we would always go back to have a family dinner. And my grandparents had a big house, una hacienda outside Mexico City. It was an old house falling apart. But every weekend, my grandparents and their 6 married children, so that's 12 there, and the 18 grandchildren, we would all go spend the weekend there. So it was like having a family reunion every weekend. And so for me, it's very important that, you sit at the table with your family and talk about things. And so they, even though they were disconnected, as the passage I read, they never missed their family dinner. And I think that, if you notice, a lot of the scenes happen at the family dinner, and a lot of the scenes happen on the freeway driving, because it's so LA,
Yes.
right? So they're
Very
driving
LA.
everywhere, you know. A lot of driving around, yes.
Food is so important in the book, and not just for Claudia, the chef, but you bring that all to life, and it's so important. I have to say, I didn't want to talk about this too early, but I had asked your publicist about the Jewish details in the book. I was like, so is this autobiographical? And I believe there's an answer to that, but I wanted the reason they were one of the characters eating matzo brie. I'm like, I just had matzo brie. It's like, it was very exciting to me because I read a lot of Jewish fiction and I don't usually get matzo brie in that. So delicious. Everybody should eat it all the time.
Yes, and actually, you know, because food is so important, and this is a mixed faith family, because the father is Catholic, the mother is Mexican Jew, and so, you know, they just kind of celebrate all the holidays, and so there's always, you know, Jewish food, Mexican Jewish food, you know, kosher enchiladas, you know. So that's kind of the vibe, and that I draw from my own family because I married into a Jewish family, and so me being Catholic, and we've had a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, but one of my online book clubs has a challenge this month, and we have to find certain phrases in our books, and one of them is the kids going to college. And so I quoted the passage where Kayla is thinking about when Claudia went off to NYU, and why on earth she would leave to, you know, go across the world or across the nation to some roach-infested room with 4 dirty women that she didn't know and not have her mother's gefilte fish. You know, I just cracked up when I read that.
Yeah.
So that's the quote that I put in the book club for proving that somebody had gone to college. So.
Yeah, I share that despair with you know, other Latina moms. You know, when our kids go to college, we feel devastated. It's, why are they leaving? You know, there are so many good colleges here in town. Why do they have to go to all the way across the country? You know, my kids went to the, you know, I said, you guys keep one step further and you're going to fall into the Atlantic Ocean.
And you have Kayla say that too in the novel.
It's my phrase. I told that to my kids because they both, you know, went to the other side of the world.
Well, as somebody who could probably have grandchildren at this point, though, I still remember going to college and I was like, I really did want to go as far as I could go and still probably not freak out my parents. But I had an excuse because if you lived in, I grew up in New York, and if you went to Columbia and you lived in New York, they wouldn't give you housing. So you had to live, I mean, in an unaffordable apartment, or I'd have to commute an hour and a half each way. So, blech.
So you figured it out.
Yeah, I went away.
Well, I also went away to college because I grew up, Daniel knows, I grew up in San Antonio, Texas, and I came to Marquette University. And I stayed here because I fell in love with winter.
We're all the better for it.
I'm certainly the better for it. I would not have met my wonderful German husband if I hadn't lived here.
You see, that's great.
Did your children must have gotten homesick for Los Angeles after reading your book? Because to me, for all the problems and the weather problems and all the stuff, it is so much of a love letter to the city, I think.
Yes. Yes, and they did grow up here, and they do have a lot of friends here, and they come back, and you know, yeah, for sure. I mean, it's home in a way, you know, and a lot of us, you know, have gone home this past year, you know, young people, you know, just going back and forming bubbles with their family members, and I so much wanted that, but my kids, my daughter stayed in New York and my son stayed in Portland. So
could you talk a little about how you tried to weave Los Angeles into the story? Like what were you trying to say about Los Angeles as you wrote the book?
well, LA for me is a permanent discovery. I am a perpetual student of the city because you really cannot get enough of it. It's so diverse and surprising and interesting. And I mean, there's over 150 languages spoken in the city. Any cuisine, you know, Ethiopia, yeah, there's little Ethiopia right here. You can go and eat Ethiopian food, or and then there's all the mix, you know. For instance, we have a Oaxacan restaurant from Mexico inside a pagoda. You know, we have you know, all this mix. There is a food truck that is very famous called the Koji truck, and they sell Korean tacos, and they're the best. They're so good. So all those little things, you know, that make the fabric of the city and the culture of the city is just fantastic. And I did want to add to the image of the city, because it really boils down to a few things. All celebrities, the Kardashians, Hollywood, you know, all is flashy and bliss, and you know, and I wanted to say, you know what, no, there's just so much more. You just have to look at it with a little more depth and see that this is a fascinating city, that there's everything, not just Hollywood, not just you know, glitzy, you know, the Oscars and the awards, and you know, there's a lot more. There's a lot more to this city, and it really is fascinating if you know how to look.
It's such a literary city too, that I just can't believe how many wonderful novels are coming out of there. I mean, just even there's Cynthia Dupree Sweeney's book this year, and the Abby Waxman books, and Michelle Hunovan, who has a new book next year. Those are always set in LA or right outside LA. The wonderful library book, you know, Susan Orlean's book, which is really such a kind of a love letter to the Los Angeles public library system. What's another one? Knockout Queen by Rupi Thorpe that came out last year. That was, and I love that there's a little bit, yeah, okay, the Cynthia Dupree Sweeney's A Good Company is a little Hollywoodish, but so many of the other ones are like you can join another book club, Tessa, and only read, you can have the Los Angeles Book Club. I mean, I wish other cities should be just so lucky, you know.
Yes, there is a huge literary scene, really. There is, there's a book. It's a little old. It totally needs to be updated, but it's fantastic because it really tells, you know, the intensity of the literary scene in LA. It's called The Misread City. If you ever find it, I don't remember the author, but it's the Misread City. All that, you know, you have Joan Didion, and you have all the noir that came after, you know, and the Bob Marlowe stories, and all of that. Once you're past that, once you're, you know, all of that is in the past, what is now happening is incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, and what's the other writer? Robert, well, James Ellroy is all Los Angeles, and
James Ellroy is local. Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. What, Tessa? I don't want to interrupt.
Oh, I was going to get back to the book or the characters for a moment, and what I'm thinking about, especially, is, you know, I'm very, very happy. I'm very, very happy that in the last several years, it's easier for me to find Latino literature, literature written by brown people who are talking about their experience. Makes it a lot easier for my Hispanic book club to find books to read too. And one of the things, though, that many of the books, many of them, if not all of them, most of them, especially those set in the United States, are dealing with the immigrant experience. And here you have a story of a family who is so established. The Alvarados got their land originally from the Spanish king, one of the land grants, so they had to be what, in the 15th century or 14th century. Usually many of those land grants go back that far. So this is a very well-established family, a clearly middle-class family. The daughters are all educated and have important jobs. So it's a different family than what many other people are expecting to see in a Hispanic family.
I love that too.
And I loved that about it because this was my family. I mean, our family didn't have the land grant, but we always, my youngest brother made a comment when my cousin did a family tree and said, oh, I always thought our family was from Mexico and we were in San Antonio in like 1812. And I said, in 1812, San Antonio was in Mexico. The border moved, we didn't.
You said the exact same thing in one of your interviews.
Yeah,
absolutely, yeah. And this is the case with Oscar. Now, if you think about, in 1848, when Mexico lost all these southern states to the United States, including California, the population in Los Angeles was 2,000 people. It was a little town, very small place. So the people who lived, so Texas was much more developed, much more dense than California. California was way out in the boonies and, it was a very small, but the Mexicans who lived in 1848, who became immediately US citizens because, California became part of the US. And this is one of these families that I'm writing about.
mm-hmm.
And the Alvarados. And yes, they received the grant because they needed to populate and so they gave land to ranchers and to grow their crops and their cattle. And that's Oscar. So he's very well established. And then Kayla, who is a first generation Mexican coming into the US to get married. But she's Mexican Jewish. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's just, I kind of wanted to complicate our views of Latinos,
Mm-hmm.
sort of to say, we come from all walks of life. We're not just one monolithic, type of Latino. We have, professionals, immigrants, rich, poor, white skin, darker skin, we have a bit of everything because what really ties us together is our culture and our identity as Latinos. But really we come from everywhere. I mean, we're so many, we're millions and millions. We've got to be different from one another,
Yeah, I think that I do see culture though so much wanting to box people, and I really celebrate that you, in a lot of different ways in the book, you tried to show people there's so many different kind of ways to be Latino.
Yeah.
So congrats, that's terrific.
Well, one of the ways you do that is with the food, all the food references. They're not just eating tacos and enchiladas, that everybody has heard of. They're eating a lot of different foods that many American readers will not necessarily have familiarity with. But boy, it made me hungry. I think I gained 10 pounds just reading.
Me too. But I've had already several people telling me, are you going to write an Alvarado cookbook? Is there going to be a cookbook with all those recipes?
I'll buy it.
I hope. Did you, has anyone been able to do like a restaurant event with you, like where people cooked food from the book? Or it's probably, with COVID, it's tougher, but I hope eventually, because that would be just delightful.
Yeah, right now, we're keeping everything virtual, and I think it's a safe way to go, and I'm okay with it. I think by the time the paperback comes out, with a little bit of luck and, we will have a milder pandemic, and we'll be able to have in-person events. And definitely, I already have I don't know if you know Patty Hinich.
Yeah, I've met her.
Oh, you have? Okay. Well,
just briefly.
We're working on doing a food event of the book with her.
Oh, great.
Yeah, she's
that would be wonderful.
Chef. Yeah.
Yes, I love her show. I just love her show.
Yes.
Was she sort of, were there any real life inspirations for, the characters are so vibrant and their jobs are so interesting, your social media person and your developer and the chef, and they're all sort of everybody's jobs sort of tie into the story, because the developer, obviously food is so important, and in terms of the developer, there's so much about home, and there's a little gentrification story, and you've got Kayla's kind of attachment to Mexico, and literally the house in Mexico that she won't give up. And then I thought the Patricia's social media stuff sort of tied in to way the story sort of unfolds by unraveling all these secrets in the book. So you mapped that, you plotted that all out, right?
You got me, Daniel.
Did you, yes. What was just talk about some of the inspirations for the different jobs and the different kind of themes in the book and how they all came together.
Well, just think about this. If you're a writer and you're going to spend 5 years writing a novel, you better like the subject matter. You better like your characters, because you're going to be sleeping with them, taking a shower with them, going to the supermarket with them, living with them. They literally move into your life, and you spend all this time and all these moments, with them. So what are my passions? And I literally do Excel lists. You're not the only one, Tessa. So I do a list and I say, okay, what are my passions? And what, if I were a character, what kind of thing I would do if these were my passion. And so I have a passion for, obviously, for food. I don't cook, but my husband is an amazing cook. So, and we spend hours in the kitchen, and I chop onions and I wash dishes and I set the table and I do all the extra stuff. And he's the chef, and we spend hours just talking and having fun in the kitchen, and we just love it. And we love to go out as well and explore little restaurants, mom and pops, little places that we love. And so, okay, so if I love food, okay, there's going to be food in the novel, and so I need a chef, right? Or I need a matriarch who is into food. So I developed Claudia and Kayla. Another one of my passions is architecture. And the LA architecture is hilarious. You got all these styles, the Chateauesque, the Spanish Revival, there's a zillion architectural styles, the modernist, the mid-century, the cottage, the bungalow, and anything in between, because people are really creative. And then, you see a movie with a type of set, and then somebody says, I gotta build myself a house like that. And then it's not a style, it's just they copied it from a movie. There are weird things that happen. And really, for me, it's a passion to observe, the architecture. So I said, okay, a flipper, an architect who flips houses, and then she feels guilty because she is contributing to gentrification and helping kick out Latinos from their old communities. And so, she's gonna regret it. She's gonna feel sorry about it, so there's gotta be a little bit of inner conflict, within her. And then Patricia, the social media guru, she's a little bit like my kids. My kids are millennials, and I've been trying to understand a lot of their thing. And so I wanted to create Patricia in the hopes of putting a little bit of understanding as to, what kind of life my kids are into, and what they do, and just observing them and their friends, and other millennials in my life. I said, I know that if I create a character that is a millennial, I will probably understand them better. And I made great improvements. Yes.
Did your kids come to you and say, you need to change this about Patricia? They're like, did they give you any input into that, or?
Yeah, for instance, technical stuff like, you gotta say Instagram filter. You can't say Instagram edit. I said, okay, correction, but it's just, just a lot of observation for my kids.
What a wonderful resource.
Yeah.
I'm very lazy with research. I really, I write what I know about because it's easier. And so I write about my life, about my family, my relatives, my world, my city. And that, is easy to research because it's right here next to me, rather than, writing about, distant planets.
Well, speaking of that, writing what I'm going to go back to Gonzalez and Daughter Trucking Company, because I really loved that book, and I loved the parts of it that were set in the prison. And I know that you founded a group, a book club in a prison for women. Talk a little bit about that.
Well,
I love the name of it, Wings for the Soul.
Wings for the Soul. And in that, because the book is like a wings,
Mm-hmm.
So for that book, I did do a lot of research. I didn't know much about truckers, so I went on the road for a year with truckers, just riding along and talking to them, and just living the experience. I didn't interview them or anything. I just sort of went along for the ride and absorbed their life, their lifestyle. And for the prison, I really tried to get into the prison, and I would write letters to the community relations person, and they would just not invite me. And so I had to invite myself with the nuns at the archdiocese, and that's how I was able to get in. And I did spend years going back to the prison. We had a program that we took kids to visit their moms, their incarcerated moms, on Mother's Day. So we did fundraisings to get charter buses to just bus the kids to the prison, and they would spend the day with mom, and I would go as a volunteer. So I was able to see life in the prison and talk to some of the inmates and see what their life was like. I wasn't interested in, why they were there or any of that. And it's not polite to ask either. So you just sort of say, well, what's your day like, and who are your friends and what do you do here? And, so that was very interesting. And then sort of to give back to them, I got permission to create this book club at the prison. And so I bought 200 of my own books to give out for them. And so they had them for 3 months, and then I can't, because they may be slow readers or not, 3 months. And then I came back and we had discussions and panels, and it was really interesting.
Oh, that's true.
And yeah, and we did it with the 2 books. We did it with Esperanza's Box of Saints and Gonzalez and Daughter Trucking Company.
We got a question from Gabby, who I had been talking to before about the book. She wanted to know which character you most empathized with.
I'll have to say that I love them all because they're my children. I empathize more with Oscar. I think he, I think he was, he's kind of like my dad. My dad was obsessed with the weather as well. And he would literally, from Mexico, call me in LA and tell me every morning, you should bring an umbrella because it's gonna rain. I'm like, you're in Mexico and I'm in LA. What? He's definitely my favorite weather person. I really empathize with him.
Tessa, did your dad do that?
My father obsessively watched the Weather Channel, and he would always let me know what was going to happen in Wisconsin.
But really, I think I empathize with Oscar, but I identify with Olivia, I think, more. With all of them, but more Olivia, because I am a mother and a half. I mean, I have so much motherhood in me that I could give it away and still have
bottle it.
I'm very, very motherly mother. I mean, I have my kids, and then I have my more kids, people that I just take under my wing, and and so I think that the turbocharged motherhood in Olivia is kind of my thing.
I love, it's funny because I was reading some stuff about people liking or not liking the characters, because your characters make some bad decisions like people do. And I sort of had a little fight about that, because I was sort of like, oh no, it doesn't matter how many mistakes these people make and how many, you can see the love in them. Like, you love these characters, and I love these characters because I want my characters to have faults. I want to understand them. And I think you did such a great job with that.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you want conflict, and you want complex characters who are not perfect. You want flawed characters like all of us, all human beings. We are flawed. And the truth is, bad choices make really good stories. I mean, yes. Are you gonna steal some embryos? Are you out of your mind? Right?
There are a lot of bad choices in this book, and
I mean, what were they thinking? Of course, Felix is gonna find out down the road outside the book, but he's gonna find out. I mean, those things, they always come out, So obviously it was a very big mistake, but see, these kind of capers, are what really moves stories along. If you read any Shakespeare play, any classic book, there's always a crime, there's always a bad decision that turns into, spirals into a huge, a horrible conflict, because that's what we want. I mean, a little while ago, I was telling you about my husband and I having a really boring story because it started out, and they lived happily ever after. Well, that's why stories end when they lived happily ever after, because after that, it's no more fun, oh, they're happy. Oh, okay, great, good for you.
I like the stories.
Your book doesn't end happily ever after. Your book ends.
We're not going to give anything away here, but oh my God, the ending is so wonderful. I loved it. And I was like, how can I love this ending? But it so fits in with the story. And it's you have a wicked sense of humor. And it's just, I mean, the hits just keep on coming.
Yeah.
Well,
But
I
you're
want
right, it's not a
sequel.
happy ending.
I want a sequel because I want to know what else is going to happen to these people.
Yeah, because
What other
there's a
bad
lot of
decisions they're going to make.
there on purpose. There are quite a few loose ends because it's a year in the life, but nothing gets resolved on New Year's Eve. You know,
No.
the problems keep going. You know, it's kind of a continuum. And so, if I were to sort out all the problems they had by New Year's, it would be so impossible. You know, it doesn't happen like that.
No, and
You
even
are
if
in
you-
LA. Oh, go ahead.
Even no matter what time frame you picked, whether it was an actual, January 1st to January 30 or December 31st, or you arbitrarily picked, May 17th to October 23rd, there would still be loose ends because that's the way life is. There's never any end to this little piece of the story. I mean, there's just always, all of us, we live complicated lives and there's a lot going on. And I think that's one of the things that makes the book so relatable to so many people, because all of us have either lived something like this or know somebody who has lived something like this. We've had families that had these same kinds of interactions with one another. It may not be exactly the same. They may not live in Los Angeles. They may not be Hispanic, but the emotions are universal. The emotions and the ways in which they deal with things are universal. All of us have experienced something like this or know somebody close to us who has experienced something like this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yes. And disastrous years, I think we've all had them, you know.
And, and the things that we take comfort in being able to call our parents. We take comfort in being able to be with our sisters, even if we're fighting. We take comfort in, certain foods that's it. I need my comfort food today. And I said to my husband just a couple of days ago, I said, I'm making picadillo because I need comfort food.
I love picadillo.
Fast, it's easy, it's one pot and it tastes good. That's all I care about.
Yeah. No, there's even the term comfort food, Yeah.
Before we go, I was going to ask you if you wanted to, since we both read a lot, we're always looking for books to add to our book list. Do you have any recommendations for us?
Well, I have two recommendations. One is a book that I have it right here. It's called The Chicken Sisters. It's by KJ Dell'Antonia. And it's such a fun book. And it's about two rival sisters who go to war because they have rival chicken restaurants in the same town in Kansas.
I think I already have that on my TBR, but I'm going to check real quick.
Okay.
I'm going to check my Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Looks really fun.
Yeah, it's a fun book. It's fun, and it's about these two sisters who, literally go to war. So loved it. And I just want to recommend a writer, not a book, a writer that I love. Her name is Reina Grande.
Oh, Reina Grande's husband is from Racine.
Oh, really?
Like right by Milwaukee. Yeah. She's
That's fun. Interesting. Well, I love Reina, and I love her work, and I love her books, and she's so prodigious and so oh my gosh, she's written all these books, just wonderful writing about different stories. She's coming out with a new book right now. Actually, I just received the ARC. I'm very excited. I'm gonna blurb it, and can't wait to read it. I think she's wonderful, Latina writer. that I adore. And so I recommend her book.
New book's called A Ballad of Love and Glory. Comes out
Yes.
next March. Yeah, she was actually supposed to do some school visits here. And we set up a program, like we got a thing where every kid was going to get a copy, and then COVID happened. And so that got canceled, but she wound up doing it virtually. So yeah, she's, and I have hosted her once in the store and also met her once at ABA, and the new book looks terrific. I just sent a link to people if they want to, you know, the way the links work, if you click on the link for Chicken Sisters or Ballad of Love and Glory, or if you don't have LA Weather yet and you want to click on that, those screens will pop up and you can read more about those books after this event closes. So I'm going to give
there is a question, Daniel.
Oh, yeah. Okay, there we go. Let's give them. Will the book, oh, this is a very interesting thing because I do know how you translate. Patricia wants to know, will the book be translated into Spanish? And who is doing that translation, I ask?
Okay, yes, it will be translated into Spanish. And so far, right now, the idea is that I do the translation. I did my own translation in my other two novels. And I really want to do the translation on this novel, but it will be depending on timing, because I have another book that I need to start writing right away. And I don't know if they overlap or not. We're still figuring out if I should dedicate myself to do the translation. But for sure, if I don't translate myself, I will be working with the translator.
You know, it is unusual for you to translate your own books.
Yeah, I know. It is actually, yeah. But I enjoy it very much. I love it. I love to do it, and it's fun because, I mean, sometimes I am translating and all of a sudden I realize like, oh my God, this is not in the English version. And so I have to, I start writing instead of translating. So I have to, be loyal to the English version, and I try to be as loyal as possible. But of course, there are some, just a few little things that I change just because they don't make sense. For instance, there in Esperanza's Box of Saints, there was a phrase that said that her husband looked like the late Mexican movie idol Pedro Infante. And in the Spanish version, I just say her husband looked like Pedro Infante. And I don't explain that he was the late Mexican movie idol because everybody knows who is Pedro Infante in Spanish. It's like in English, you said, the rock and roll king, we know who is Elvis Presley. You don't have to, explain who he is. Just say he looked like Elvis Presley, right? And everybody will know. And so little adjustments, but just minor.
That's so wonderful. Do you have a last question, Tessa?
No, actually, all my questions got answered already.
Well, all my questions are answered too. We're thrilled.
I look forward to the cookbook.
And I look forward, I'm looking forward to the fact that you're already working on your next book. You usually take a while between books. This is very exciting.
Yeah. But this one has been cooking on the stove for a while. So I really need to get on the case.
Well, we can't wait until it comes, the pot is boiling and it's ready.
Right.
For serving. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you, Tessa. You're always a spectacular interview partner. We are your treasure to all 26 book clubs and everybody else in Milwaukee. Thank you so much. Continued success to you. I know we talked about how this is not the Hollywood LA, but boy, I'm sure there's somewhere reading that now who's saying this is going to be a very good streaming series. So
I wish.
I think so.
There were times when I thought it's a little like a telenovela.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
What else is going to go wrong? Who's going to go blind? Who's going to lose an arm? who's going to get amnesia?
Yeah,
I tell you, that narrative is so ingrained in my head that everything I write comes out as a telenovela because I grew up on telenovelas.
Well, I remember listening to them with my grandmother on the radio.
Yeah.
I was even I was thinking about them, and I love. At the same time, it's a telenovela, but it's so grounded in reality. Like it's you've kind of merged the two genres together, and I thought that was terrific.
Yeah.
So.
Well, thank you very much. This was very exciting, wonderful. Thank you to everybody who has been, participating, and I really appreciate you spending some time with us. And thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Tessa.
You're
I
welcome.
look forward to seeing you again down the line.
Someday on one of your trips to Mankato.
Of course.
and I'm gonna make a prediction that when the Hispanic Book Club reads this book, we're gonna ask the wonderful staff at Antigua Restaurant that did a menu from like Water for Chocolate for us. We're gonna ask them to do a menu from this book.
Nice.
Oh, how fun. Yes. Well, send me pictures.
Yeah.
Okay.
All
Good
right,
night, everybody.
Thank you
Good
so
night.
much. Bye.
Hasta luego.
Hasta luego. Nos vemos.